Um, Hello everyone, and thank you for joining us for this very special event with Enter Projects Asia today. And we are more than 140 design students as well as instructors from different universities, both in Turkey and from Europe and USA. And I would like to welcome all of you. And today we're hosting Patrick Keane, the founder and director of Enter Projects Asia, and he will present his award-winning project, VIKASA Headquarters and Spice and Barley Restaurant. Let me first introduce myself. My name is Esinerk, and I will be moderating the webinar together with Onur, Asena, and Ece. And before we start, as Bilkent University's Design and Architecture Society, we would like to thank in advance for Patrick Keane for his collaboration. And today, first, he will start with the presentation about two of his projects, and he will tell us about the interior concept, construction challenges, and as well as Project Ratan and any other information he wants to share with us. And then we will move on with the question and answer session. So now I would like to leave the floor to our special guest, Mr. Keane. Thank you.
Thanks very much, everyone. We're sitting in. I'm sitting in Thailand right now, where I'm based in the island of Phuket. So I'm in the office, and it's 6 o'clock in the evening. And so yeah, this is our headquarters. We work all over Southeast Asia, but we're also shipping some of our products and projects to Belgium. We're doing some work in London, and we also have an expat market of clientele that live in this area for certain times of the year, and then they move back to other parts of the world. So we run quite a dynamic office. We've got a key staff of 10 or 12 designers. We also run an initiative called Project Ratan, which was started in the lockdown to really work with the arts and crafts people of Thailand, and a home furnishings / furniture initiative was commenced that dovetails in with our architectural projects. Despite the pandemic, we've been incredibly busy, actually. Our workload has been quite on the increase, and so I'll also talk to you about that today. Our core ideas are fusing the latest technology with arts and crafts using noble or natural materials. So we don't really use much plastic, and we're looking for efficiencies, continual efficiencies in business as we develop our products. Yeah, I mean, we sort of aspire to be, you know, a voice, or the voice of architecture in our own way. Yeah, our aspirations are very, very high at this point, and we've been gaining a lot of global press, namely the Interior Design New York Sustainability Project of the Year, Design Awards winner for the Health and Wellness segment for one of our projects. So on that note, I'll jump into the presentation. If anybody has any questions, they can ask me. If they have any questions after the event, they can type them to me, and we'll just see how we go. So, I mean, it's the work's always changing and evolving. It's about working with, you know, natural structural systems sometimes, with 3D printed technology. This is a dome or a pod for a yoga studio, and this is a piece of that. So it's a Klein bottle geometry. We have a 3D printer here where we print our models. This is for a house. These are the two levels of the house. So it's a very wide, thin house. That's going to be out of brick. And yeah, it's really important to fuse these ideas together. We've noticed that actually with 3D printing, we're doing a lot more models. I think in architecture, the models started to become lost. We do a lot more prototypes. While we're not making each part of the 3D printing, because the 3D printing process in a sense takes over, we are a very manufacture-based design office, as you'll see in our project. So I'm just going to share my screen and we'll get into the presentation. So this is a project that we worked on where we picked up the Design Awards for health and wellness. It's a yoga studio, and this is actually the owner of the yoga studio. He is doing some of his techniques in one of the small yoga pods in the private pods, and this pod is made entirely out of rattan, but it was modeled in 3D prior to that. So we work with a lot of systems, computing systems that what we adopt as a file to factory process. So we're alleviating the need for construction documentation, where we take a 3D model and instead get more into a not a shop documentation, but templates, CNC laser cut that go straight into the model for construction. So we build big models. Sometimes they're prototypes, but sometimes they're actually the real thing. We've just recently also done a presentation which I've combined with this presentation called The Art of the Possible. It was for a project in Malaysia, and this material that I'll show you today is the first time I've presented it to anybody. It's got some of our core ideas, core concepts. It's for a master plan in Desaru, which is the east coast of Malaysia, north of Singapore. And we were really looking at how we could make something that is beyond any precedents, beyond anything that we could imagine. It's urban grassroots sustainability. So a lot of people talk about sustainability with reducing plastic, with the correct material choice. We're actually looking at sustainability in forms and construction techniques, less wastage, file to factory processes. So real fundamental grassroots sustainability. A lot of people pay lip service to that word, and they badge it onto something that is just a fairly typical design. On that note, it's been proven that spending time in nature is one of the best things we can do for our mental health. Mimicking the natural world in design is also a great way to boost mood and aid relaxation, because we do a lot of wellness projects. Studies have shown that certain styles of architecture can have a similar effect to meditation, and that's why getting design right is so imperative to good mental health, especially in these strange times. So a fan of mine who built the Sydney Opera House, an architect called Bjorn Knudsen, said that he likes to be on the edge of the possible, which I think is a quote that resonates well with us. And the art of the possible can start with a simple sketch, as we've proven in the past, or a simple digital sketch. And that's probably how we won the Best of Year winner for 2020 in Interior Design New York. And in the award. This image of me here is holding a bamboo basket, working with in a very efficient, lightweight structure. So I'll jump into the Desaru project. This is an image of it, and it's working with a concept of nature being our biggest resource. Let's use it as inspiration. So the project was a wellness brief, yoga, active lifestyle spaces, including sports therapy, spa treatment, meditation, complementary medicine and healing, which is not taking pills or medicine or prescription drugs, but more to find out additives in food and nourishment. So yeah, we really do take nature as inspiration. This is these are some shots, some photographs of our client for VIKASA. This is his headquarters. This is his resort. And then yeah, just the alternative medicine ideas and complementary practices, which eventuate in what should be active space design, dynamic programs in unique settings. So active spaces meaning that they're non-static spaces, that the space needs to be viewed from as a formal proposition from many vantage points. Traditional geometries don't really service these kinds of requirements. We look at a lot of journey-based space exploration with our urban designs and with our buildings. So here's my client again. This is the VIKASA project, as you know. This was a really fantastic project to work on, while it was very, very challenging, because we had a whole team of arts and crafts rattan people that had skills for 5 generations. And it was really the first opportunity for them to make something that is able to perform in a commercial setting. So a lot of the people that made this make baskets. They have weaving techniques, small scale market-based objects. This is bringing them into the whole, really the forefront of design and working with commercial space. We spoke a lot about it in seminars with health and wellness online events with some of the key players in the industry. And then on the slide on the bottom, this is an eco wellness resort in Phuket, which was looking at this idea again of structures for health and climate responsive design. This is some shots from the VIKASA project under construction, and really is a sentiment for us fusing arts and crafts with technology and design. So on the very, very left-hand side, you have a small image of a Klein bottle, which is a form that has an interior and an exterior simultaneously, and fusing arts and crafts with technology and design. These are a few more of our accolades related to that project. This is VIKASA. As mentioned earlier, it won the winner of the Design Awards. The material palette in the main space here is marine plywood faced with teak. So when you go in there, you feel like it's a very comfortable natural space in a urban oasis in a concrete jungle of Bangkok. So it's a nice contrast to that. So it's really an oasis of tranquility, meditation. These are some of the areas in the space. So this is the spa and treatment and wellness zones. And that's, again, my client performing, I believe, a scorpion pose. I think that's what it's called for you yoga buffs out there. So with our process, you can see here in this chair, for example, or in the light, that there's a real arts and crafts element to these designs, that they're built in a way that could not really be developed in a factory or traditional commercial ways of delivery and deployment. There's a very tactile element, a very hands-on touch with overtly contemporary design. So these forms, you could probably build a model of them, but these are all 3D forms that we developed to service the space. And also back here, sometimes a light and a chair and a room can all blend into one thing, one form. So the form can turn from a room into a light, into a chair. There's no traditional hierarchy of those elements. So our design is not, it's blurred between everything. It's just more about space. This is a very noteworthy project for us as well, very new project called Spice Barley. It's a gastro dining experience, and again, we used a lot of rattan in this project to a very commercial level. Here are some details of the rattan. It's rattan is one of the world's most sustainable materials. It grows like a reed, and it's quite a flexible material and has a good material quality to it, a richness. We were highlighted in Design again, and for the rattan columns. So if you look us up in Design, we're in there. And the columns are actually 9 meters high, or 30 feet. And the reason for doing the columns was a couple of reasons: to obviously make it a landmark project, to make it a statement on the skyline. So it's a little bit like the Thai temples or the golden colors in an eye-catching way. The brief was to do a gastro pub craft beer bar. So it's meant to be a smooth fluid shape like liquids or beer. And then obviously the context of rattan, Southeast Asia. And last but not least, the function, which is incredibly important to us. It covers up all of the air conditioning, all of the beer lines, all of the electricity, all of the piping, all of the things that make this project work. And also it's slightly transparent, so it doesn't take over the space or clog the space. So by transparent, you can actually see the services in here and the structures and the aircon and the pipes, all of these pipes in here, but covered in a veil to give them a cosmetic upgrade. An interesting note about the photography of this project. The first project was photographed by Ed Summer. This project was photographed by a very well-known, very interesting person called William Binns, who photographs all of the Apple stores in Southeast Asia. The reason why I contacted him is because I think with the Apple store in Bangkok, he got the blue hour just right, which means the few minutes before sunset. And so on the left, this image was very, very carefully studied about working with the blue and the gold, which are complementary colors on the color spectrum. And that's what he did with Apple. If you look at any photographs on Apple stores. The color balance is calculated very, very well to show this element. So we do a lot of space, what we call space activation projects. This is a project we're looking at right now. It's for all-day dining and functions in Phuket. It's an outdoor space, which is a renovation project, working with a series of structural canopies. We'll probably 3D print this one, which I'll come to in a minute, with our Desaru Malaysia project. So back to Desaru and the famous quote, it's been proven that spending time in nature is one of the best things we can do for our mental health. This is the site. It's just off the East Coast Peninsula of Malaysia, about 3 hours drive north of Singapore. It's a beachfront site, quite hilly, with some very lush, strong, rich vegetation. What we wanted to look at doing was a master plan with a central hub, because we found that a lot of the wellness resorts, while they have a central hub, it's not really iconic, which is what we're after here. Well, that's not fair to say. There's always, you know, a nice element to, you know, a Six Senses or a Shiva song. But this project was, the goal was to make it really spectacular in the center. The master plan is 70 freestanding bungalows and 10 houses. So like working in landscapes, topographical formations, these are really our starting blocks instead of typical building forms. So we'll look at landscapes, we'll do wind studies and come up with a series of what we call dynamic form studies. Big idea here was to have a canopy that covered that central hub and then reprogram elements in the central hub to be specific wellness activities with a non-specific meandering quality to it of journey and discovery. So after a few reviews, studies, and back and forth, this is how the project started to take shape. We're trying to keep as much nature as possible. So all of the buildings that you see here are all on stilts. And then the main structure, or the more heavy construction, takes up a very, very small part. Because we noticed on this coastline with other comparables that a lot of excavation took place. A lot of earth removal, a lot of removing of natural habitat of trees, which I don't think is necessary if it's well planned out and thought for in the first place. So, you know, traditional building forms, even traditional methods of construction, like, you know, piles and footings, are not always necessarily the answer to having these projects come together. This is the main building hub. It includes wellness and yoga, spa, and treatment restaurants and bars. These smaller umbrellas in the front are shading devices, but also areas for massage, restaurants, and small like juice sections and things like that. So the project just started to build up and gain momentum. This is the lobby and main building perspective view with a drop-off area and porte cochere. And then we start to jump into the technology, how to actually think about making this. Originally, we were looking at traditional structures like steel or potentially aluminium, which we use a lot of. But we went really back to the source of how this project could come together. And we came up with really like a coral density or formation. We've been in touch with WASP in Switzerland, who specialize in using nature's systems. And so we're looking at printed coral structures for a completely sustainable approach. Coral printed structures are very, very popular to do the coral regeneration programs. So there's no reason why we shouldn't do that with the building. On the left is a model, 3D model of coral. On the right is a piece of printed coral that will go into a coral reef to encourage the fish and the sea life to come back to certain areas where coral has been damaged. So back to Desaro. This is the atmospheric rendering, if you like, of the whole project. There's varying levels of density, there's varying levels of heights, and they start to become programmed as it's developed with outdoor covered areas, including private massage, say potentially in this area here, or a juice station, casual dining, refreshment in areas like this here, working with this kind of structure. Really a coral-based formation of intersections and ideas based on that. On to wellness and spa spaces. Back to something I mentioned earlier in the piece, the Klein model. We've actually got a Klein model, 3D printed model here. So it's very nice to touch, and this is the connection piece. I tried to get a section for you today, but I couldn't, so this is it here. And it's really dealing with an idea of, this is a scientific diagram where the interior and the exterior are included into the same form. And in a sense, that's a nice beginning of a representation of interconnectedness of mind, body, and soul. Mental and physical states of architecture and form should embody this. So this is really how we're after a grassroots sustainability in ethics, form, and materials, and a unique construction. And so this building is really to come directly from the site. So here you have a couple of 3D studies of the model I've just shown you. And this will form part of that, that aspect in the resort. We do a lot with nature's weaving structures with basketry, rattan work, as you've seen, and natural materials, so that's ongoing. And this is the team in the factory. These are the VIKASA photographs under construction, where we're working with 5 generations of arts and crafts. So the movement zones, the active lifestyle, is really a nature-based concept. Down to the details of wellness and tranquility. Sustainability and ethics, materials and unique constructions have led us to looking at 3D printed structures where natural clay will be used to print the spaces. So up here you have an interior. On the base here you have 2 exterior spaces, And on the right, the top and the bottom, they're examples of clay printed structures, which is something we're deploying in a house right now. So this is the therapy and treatment area for Desaru. And we're looking at using natural clay to support these natural forms, just the way nature intended. So we're really fusing the latest technology with the most simple age-old materials: clay, stone, bricks, rattan, and others. Onto the rooms. These are really immersed in nature. I mentioned earlier that we're looking at plinth buildings. So all of the plumbing and the electrical could go down the central core. And these buildings could also be 3D printed structural in using clay materials. So this is one of the stilts, one of the plinths for the building. These are the materials. And back to rattan. So everything's really about touching nature, touching the elements, having a tactile quality to all of our spaces, and fusing it with the latest technology. So it's got relevance in terms of design and relevance in terms of context and materials, and also working with people that are specialists in arts and crafts. Here's some examples of the project we're shipping off to Belgium. So you can see the detailing here is incredibly precise, and the whole object. This is for, this whole object is for a logistics company. And it's a lighting scheme, a meeting room, and furniture. Onto another company that we have formed in the lockdown. This is called Project Rattan, and it dovetails in with our architectural design and products. It's something that we work back and forth a lot with, and some of this content now we're shipping abroad, worldwide. So you'll see that a lot of the smaller pieces that we have are actually helping us to be studies for the bigger projects, the bigger pieces. So I designed this chair in the lockdown. It's called the Infinity Chair. And again, it's working with the Klein bottle concept. Because like anything, uniqueness and individuality make personality. So this is the Infinity Chair on the left. This is the Infinity Table on the right. And that's me checking out some of the details for the Infinity Table in the factory. That's the prototype on the left of the Infinity Chair. That's another prototype on the right in rattan on the Infinity Chair. And if you look in here, that's the finished product. So this is an exhibition showroom that we have, only on rattan, nothing else. This is called Project Rattan. We have a website. We have a QR code. So if people come and visit the space, or if they can't come and visit the space, we have a whole initiative based on working with natural material and using 5 generations of arts and crafts. So everything you see here is made in rattan. The reason why is because it's one of the world's most sustainable materials. We use a lot of other materials, but this is something we're developing. So this is the gallery space. And these are the chairs. This is our most basic model. This is the table. And these are some screens. This is another photo of the infinity chair. And this is a lighting concept that we're renovating some offices, and we'll be having that also in that space. So back to the ethics side of what we do. Let's look at the humble chair. Sometimes as architects or students, you'll be doing a project and the director of the company will say we need 200 or 300 chairs, maybe 500 chairs for an auditorium. Most of the time the chair will be made out of plastic. That is absolutely catastrophic to the environment. So if we could do our own small bit and make it something like as a simple chair like this in a noble natural material, that's a huge positive impact on the environment. The chairs are very, very light. They're very, very strong. They've got an aluminium subframe. And also in a hot country like Thailand, you cannot sweat in this chair because it's porous. You've got these vents here. So here's a few statements of what we're thinking about. Our first point is saving Thai craft traditions by going local, to reduce the importation of inferior products like plastic from nameless, faceless factories, save the planet from going natural, elevate our initiatives using design as a mechanism. Contemporary design has alternatives, and it's important as designers to bring this into the mainstream. Make nature contemporary. Many current solutions tend to have arts and crafts but don't blend contemporary aesthetics or design elegance. And also just to raise awareness, it's not about straws or plastic bottles. While that's important, thousands of kilometers of synthetic materials are produced daily, emitting greenhouse gases and severely damaging ecosystems. There are some easy alternatives. This is me in the factory. And what you see is the VIKASA pod in the background. So yeah, really working with natural systems is something that we should really, I think, make us out as one of the core values of an architectural or a design firm, and coming up with unique materials to substantiate that. So if I was in your part of the world, I'd be looking definitely at, working with wicker or materials like clay, like local bricks, but maybe elevating the technology side of them. So, you could deploy things like 3D printing or developing dynamic structures. I think that a lot of the things that we accept as designers, because we don't think we have a choice, placed on us, but I think it's always good to ask questions as to whether there are alternatives to what is generally is typical precedents. So the step with, a traditional house builder or a homemaker versus somebody that can design a product or project like an architect can be taken further. So the industry is not driving you, you are driving it. Because with the advent of the internet and the efficiencies of online communication, I think the negatives in design are that we tend to get lazy and there's always an answer on the internet. Just for reference, we don't use the internet when we do our design at all. When we make a presentation to a client, we don't use any precedents from anybody else's work, unless it's a descriptive precedent in nature or an image, but we generally also take those photos ourselves. So I think it's really, really important to use the internet as a service tool, but not actually use it as an ideas tool. I don't think ideas have been helped very much with the advent of the internet in any way. I think the knowledge of what's out there has, but I think there's always a space to have a unique and an original idea, no matter what technology that you're surrounded with. Definitely be informed by the internet, like know what's out there. But I think when it comes to originality and ideas, I think it's not possible to get it off the internet. I know people will more than likely disagree with me on that, but yeah, that's something that we have as an ethos in the office. So yeah, like Frank Lloyd Wright to my right, this is for the people that have just joined, that's a tile from a Frank Lloyd Wright building that was part of a set for a movie for Blade Runner. That tile was actually made for the movie set in fiberglass, but the original tiles were made from the sand of the site. And so he was really also working with the context of where his projects were. And I think that's incredibly important, but also doing it in overtly contemporary design. And if you look at the scale of the tile, these are representations of his forms on a very, very small level. So I don't want to compare myself to Frank Lloyd Wright, but we work with what I would consider a scaleless practice. So something very, very small can be an idea or model for something very, very large. On that note, I'll close, and thanks very much for having me. If anybody has any questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Patrick, for this very nice and detailed presentation. And I hope we can visit these unique projects as soon as possible. So now we will move on with the Q&A session. If you want to ask a question, you can use the raise hands button on the participant section.
Sure.
Or you can directly write your questions on chat and then we can read it. But for a more interactive session, we prefer you to unmute yourself and then ask your questions.
Okay, so how are you going to do this? Is somebody going to ask me a question?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, there's a chat here. Is that what I'm looking at?
Actually, there is no question on chat right now.
Maybe we can wait a little more. Yeah, Baran has a question.
Hello. So I wanted to ask you, while you mentioned the chairs instead of like the plastic ones and the eco-friendly chairs, so how much does it cost compared to the plastic ones? And using plastic chairs is to cut down the costs. And how can we achieve low costing eco-friendly chairs? Have you any ideas about that?
Okay, yeah. I mean, these chairs are not that expensive. I think they retail for like $80 or something like that. But the issue is that if you spend $5 or $10 more on a chair, and it's ecologically a huge advance in its footprint, that's much more substantial than a chair which costs the planet a lot more in the long run. And just the habits of what people do, what we say, okay, we need 100 chairs. We don't even think about where those chairs are coming from. With this particular model that we're promoting with other groups, you could actually, if you wanted to, you could meet the person that made the chairs for you. So the chair you're sitting on right now, it'd be nice to know the person that made that, right? So with this whole issue going on globally right now with these problems, it's the best time to look at natural and local alternatives. And for designers to steer that path. Nobody else can do that except for designers. The designers are in the front seat. They're in charge of this whole situation. And it's up to the designers to educate the public in a widespread campaign to do that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much, Baran, for the question. And Bora has a question, or you can unmute yourself.
I have a question about the manufacturing process. Do you think it would be possible to mass produce these rattan sculptures and furniture you have designed? I know it keeps the traditions alive and supports the local people, but do you think it is really possible to mass produce these things actually?
Yes, definitely. Yeah. Some of the work is craft based. Some of the work is low skill, some of the work is medium skill, and some of the work is high skill. So absolutely. And I think that I work with people in the factory. I see them working. And so I know how it is. It's a very, very simple, basic life, okay? We get people from all over Thailand and they just show up and they do some work, and then some of them go away and they come back and they bring their families. I would not want to see some of the other factories of where people are working making plastic chairs. So again, I think it's up to the designer to bring personality into their designs by the manufacturing process that they choose. We can't do it with everything, but we've got to start somewhere. But yes, definitely you can mass produce these chairs. That model that I showed you is entirely mass producible. We're almost at the point of mass producing it ourselves. Just it's a volume issue. We make hundreds, not thousands, but we make hundreds, which is a lot.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Bora, for the question. Now, Miray has a question.
Hello. First of all, I would like to thank you about this comprehensive presentation. I have a question about the acoustical properties of the rattan. How does what is the acoustical properties of this material? Can you explain a bit about it?
Okay, sure. Yeah, I mean, we had to, for the yoga studio, we had to pad it out with some acoustic panel. So it doesn't in and of itself have much of an acoustic property. Yeah, you have to detail it in its own ways. I mean, if you double it up, it definitely has an acoustic property. It depends on the thickness and the size of it. It's a solid material, so just try and find somewhere here. So it's not like a bamboo, which is hollow. So it's has better acoustic properties than bamboo.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Mira. Also, Ece has a question.
And I have a general question about the eco materials. Actually, I think, as I told you before, I'm very keen on the eco materials. So do you think in the near future, these kind of eco materials will be like much more common? And do you think we will be able to build like a whole building with this? I mean, like, for example, using not just rattan, but also using some algae or mycelium based like eco planting materials.
Oh, absolutely. This is where the world is going.
Mm-hmm.
There's an answer to your acoustic issue. You know, you can definitely do stuff with plankton and algae, with what is considered, you know, a rubbish plant-based product, or something that's just eaten in Japanese restaurants. You know, it's huge. It's where everything's going. It's where everybody's talking about it. And you know, bamboo shavings for acoustic panels. If you're not talking about it now, you'll become a dinosaur as an architect, as a designer. Two very, very large companies went out of business last week in Asia. I'm not going to mention who they are, but they've got at least a couple of thousand people working for them because their work has no relevance. Clients are not interested in working with these large-scale firms anymore. The model of the future is grassroots sustainability, smaller firms, dynamic creativity, and a more vertical-based business. By that, I mean master planning, design, implementation, fabrication, offering the clients more alternatives in more of the process. That is the future of architecture and design. And if people are not involved in that in some way, then they're wasting their time.
Even in my design project, I am trying to do something like a building that has 2 layers. One of the part is going to be like, for example, algae concrete, and it will act as a biosymbiosis. And the second layer might be kind of a building structure that might not constructed, but can grow within the centuries. So thank you for this nice presentation, by the way. It was really inspiring, especially for me.
Sure. Well, anybody, if anybody has any questions, they can always email me for input. And you know, when the borders open again, I can definitely come by Turkey at some point. That's no problem. That
will be really great for us to actually before the pandemic, we were having site visits to some buildings, and we were actually visiting the building with the guidance of the architect, but we were generally like 40 people. Right now we are much more, and we would love to meet you in person definitely too.
Great.
Thank you, Ece. And now Esin has a question.
So I had a question with your process with creating these farms. I guess I read about it in a magazine about Rhino and Maya, but I was wondering if you are first experimenting with physical prototypes when creating farms, or are you designing them totally in digital softwares?
Well, we start with a process called 3D sketching. I'll just see if I have something here. 1 second. Has anybody used Maya before?
Yeah, I used it for not much architectural pieces, but we had a class, Advanced Visualization Studio, and more like product design.
Okay. I apologize, I cannot show you a Maya model because I don't have my equipment here. It's nighttime right now. But essentially it's a 3D sketch. So it's a wireframe. I can show you something very quickly. I just don't have my mouse here. So we start with something like this. Okay. So this is a Maya model. It's very dynamic. It's very interactive, and it's really a wireframe, like a sketch. It's a very light, very fast model, and enables us to draw dynamic forms and create intersections and things that you wouldn't be able to do with a typical vector-based software. Okay. And this is line. This is lines. It's nothing else. So this is what we consider a 3D sketch. We might send it off to get printed like this. And then we look at the structures of what's going on. This is a piece of coral from the beach near my house, like this. Okay. So we use a lot of dynamic modeling, a lot of quick studies, a lot of form finding ideas, and understanding how this can start to influence the work. But we also we call them 3D sketches because they don't have windows and doors, or they're not plans extruded, you know, they're forms. And so, and then we print them, but we also do, some of the people in the office, they like to sketch as well, you know, and then they put that in the computer as an idea, as a 3D idea. So then from that, we get into, you know, descriptions or renderings. And we use a lot of WhatsApp. We have WhatsApp for desktop. So we throw the models and the renderings back and forth, the diagram studies back and forth in WhatsApp. And then we mark it up in WhatsApp and send it around. For every one of our projects, we have a WhatsApp group team that's working on that, deal with those issues in development. So because we don't really have a pin-up space anymore because of this global pandemic idea, the WhatsApp and this digital modeling idea is 3D space. So I'll take a picture of this and I'll send it to another designer, and I'll say, what do you think? And they can comment, or can you render this for me? And then they'll render it and send it back. And we develop the projects in that way. Does that make sense? Does that help?
Yeah, I was, since your forms are very dynamic and very flexible, I think since I also have some experience with Maya, it's really easy to experiment and come up with like quick sketches. So it makes sense. And one last question was, you mentioned that you're making lots of like shipping your projects worldwide. You mentioned your Belgium project. I guess it's easy in terms of, because your pieces are lightweight, that in terms of logistics, it's, I guess, making it easier. But are there any like other challenges of having like international projects? I mean, in terms of logistics.
Oh goodness, yes, yeah, absolutely. You know, keeping costs under control. Just meeting our client expectations. It's not hard. It's not that they're not new problems, but making sure that you know, communication is clear. That's always an issue in architecture to the end user. I mean, we've got a very different project I can show you very, very quickly. It's not in the presentation. Do you want me to show you something?
Yeah, that would be perfect.
So this is a house that we're doing. It's a courtyard design, and it's using a series of computer scripts to generate the changes in the porosity of bricks. So see this brick wall here, how it's 50%. It reduces down to 20 and then solid. Does that make sense? So the transparency of the brick changes. So this is a very, very different project from our shipping overseas. This is a house that's local. We're working with local materials, but we will print out templates for the patterns for this brick. So any bricklayer can do this in a very straightforward way. Yeah, so, okay, my answer to your question is, it's not just a weight issue. Rattan is very light, that can be shipped very easily. For us, it's how we can do what we can in certain areas and the logistics behind that. That's my answer.
Yeah, makes sense. Thank you.
And then we're doing a project, we're looking at doing a project in Norway where we will have a local architect. And if I can make it there, I can do it. Otherwise, they'll have to do everything themselves. A spa in Norway. Yeah.
Thank you, Patrick.
Okay. Well, unless there's any other questions, I'm going to go.
So I believe there are no further questions. So then I slowly close this session. So thank you one more time for everyone who has joined us in this webinar. I think we reached to 85 people. So it was a very joyful and inspiring seminar. And I believe as design students, we have gathered so many new information that will enhance our perspective. So thank you for giving your time and evening from Thailand. So it was an honor to us to host you here. And as I just said, we hope in the near future, we can have the chance to host you here as well and meet you in person. So that's all from me. And is there anything, Esin, Onur, Ece, you would like to add?
Yes, if you could like all our stuff on Facebook and Instagram. I believe that building up a design community can also be done online. So stay in touch with what we're doing. We're very fresh we've got a lot of fresh work, dynamic, high ambition office, and we'll be posting a lot of new stuff coming up. We've got some renovation work, we've got the resort, we've got a whole bunch of really interesting and exciting dynamic projects. If anyone's got a question, please email me. If you want me to be an advisor in the future to any of your students on their work, that's fine. We can set something up. Just let me know, and keep trying in new ideas and dynamic individuals. It's really important. But first and foremost, if you want to join us on social media, send me a note. It might not be me responding, it might be somebody else, but we want to encourage a real strong, creative, design focused community. Thank you very much for the invitation.
Thank you very much for your support as well, and for all the insight about like local approaches about eco materials and showing so many materials about your project. And we hope one day we can meet in the future after the pandemic.
Thank you. Good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Good night from
Good
Thailand.
night, Patrick.
See you.
Thank you, Patrick.